What's going on, Dolphins? It is your boy Dillon, and I got a little bit more news for you. It's not breaking. I wasn't the first one to get it out there, but the Dolphins have continued their big spending in free agency. They are blowing through this cap space. And look, I've got my concerns. Again, I've told you guys I wouldn't do it this way. You want to supplement in free agency, kind of almost like undrafted free agents. You want to build through the draft. You're going to get your youngest, cheapest, most upside players that way. That's how you're going to build the core of your team. And then you want to supplement in the draft, and you want to bring in guys that are going to be, either mid or low level as far as price goes. You don't want to get the guys that are going to be the biggest, cap charges and the highest fucking price points, right? And you want to try and you want those guys to either essentially you want to go into free agency as if you're searching for backups and special teams guys and so on and so forth, right? Because free agency is supposed to be about supplementing, not building in free agency, right? And most free agents, a lot of them end up being, in the middle to late of their prime, like Eric Flowers and Shaq Lawson, right? They're 25. They're not super old, but they're in the middle of their prime. And as they get through their contracts with the Dolphins, they're going to be moving to the back end of their prime, right? And also too, like in a lot of these contracts, it's heavily front loaded, and I'm not a huge fan of that either necessarily. It depends, but especially with the way that they're going, not only are they blowing through their cap space, but they're front loading it. They're giving all pretty much, like in Eric Flowers and Shaq Lawson's case, it's 2/3 of the entire contract that is guaranteed to them. So if they don't live out the entire contract, then you've already given them pretty much all the money, and you don't get to recoup nearly as much or get as much of it back, or you take it in some kind of, you take it as a cap charge even if you get rid of the guy. So if they don't make it through their entire contract and produce at the level that you're paying them for, then it becomes a massive waste and can set you back, because then you have cap problems, and they are blowing through this cap space. So again, I'm the philosophy that they've adopted, I would totally not do. But this other guy, so they picked up another player. So far, it's been 3 guys on defense and 1 guy on offense. Eric Flowers is obviously a guard. Then they got, the safety. I'm not going to try and pronounce his name because I can't. And then they picked up Shaq Lawson. And for sure, on paper, a lot of these moves are upgrades. The new one is ex-Patriots linebacker Kyle Van Noy agrees to a 4-year, $51 million contract. So on paper, our defense is certainly going to be a lot better. And at the guard position, at least one spot over Michael Dieter. Eric Flowers is an upgrade, but they do have their own downsides as well. And again, they're in the middle to back end of their prime and getting these massive contracts. And so there's good reason to believe that they won't see the end of their contract on the Dolphins roster, right? But let's get into this a little bit. Free agent linebacker Kyle Van Noy agreed to terms on a 4-year, $51 million contract with the Miami Dolphins on Monday, according to Ian Rappaport. The 28-year-old Van Noy, and see, he's already 28. If he gets through his contract, he'll be 32. But there's a good possibility he won't make it through it. But a lot of it is, in guaranteed money. So, it is what it is. Although he's also the most productive out of all these players to this point. Obviously he came from the Patriots, etc., etc. He had a solid, stat line, 15 games, 56 tackles, 7 tackles for loss, 14 quarterback hits, 6.5 sacks, 3 forced fumbles, and 2 fumble recoveries. And again, on paper, it's certainly an upgrade. But we've seen, and people use the Browns as the most notable example of a team that tanked as something to look at. But how are they doing, right? And a lot of these guys, not only are they big contracts, but they are big personalities. And we've seen that could potentially cause some issues. And again, this team is going to be almost entirely different with an almost entirely different coaching staff, new schemes, all of that. So, you know, there's a lot that could certainly derail this whole situation and cause it to and cause problems. And let's also note though that, you know, just as I said in my previous videos, they've pretty much done exactly what I've expected and what I said they would and what they said they would. There's no denying that they've been massive spenders in free agency. They told us flat out they were going to do it. All the evidence pointed towards it, and now they have done it. But let's not discount them. And I think that the moves that they've made to this point only helps to bolster the idea that they are going to move up in the draft. Why? Because they're fortifying their defense, and they've gotten at least one offensive lineman to fortify the offensive lineman so far in free agency, and the big name guys that are, you know, at the top of the league and as far as performance, etc., right? And so look, I mean, this is leaning heavily towards them end up trading up to go get a quarterback. And if they do that, I personally think that this whole philosophy is going to end up backfiring and you know, be a disaster. But, you know, we'll have to wait and see how they handle the draft and the rest of free agency. Again, on paper, Byron Jones as well, right? So all these massive contracts, but nobody can deny that they've been huge players in free agency and are blowing through their cap space. So, you know, we went into this thing with having like 100 million in cap space. By the time we get to the season, I'm going to be very curious to see where it's at, because we are just ripping through it like it's nobody's business right now. Yeah, and so like I said, I fully expect that they're going to trade up to go get the quarterback of their future or whatever, whoever that is. And I've said consistently from the beginning, right? I don't know who it's going to be. Maybe they, you know, do pull a blockbuster trade and go up to the number 1 spot and get Joe Burrow. I don't know. I think it's more likely that they trade with the Detroit Lions to get to the number 3 spot, but you never know. I think that, I mean, to me, it's inconceivable that they won't trade up to get a guy. I think it's almost, in my mind, it's pretty much a guarantee. But I've said consistently, it's for whichever quarterback that Stephen Ross is in love with at that moment. And it could be decided literally minutes before they put in their card. But maybe it's Burrow. Maybe they, you know, jump up to the number 1 spot. Maybe they, you know, get Tua. Maybe it's Herbert. I don't know. But I think that is the absolute, certainly at the very least, that's the most likely scenario to play out in the upcoming draft. And, you know, so we'll have to wait and see. I think it's a terrible philosophy. I don't think it's going to pan out at all like they think it will. But they can prove me wrong, and I hope that they do prove me wrong, because ultimately I would like to see the Dolphins rise back to prominence. I just don't think it's going to be doing the things that they've been doing and going down the path that they have gone. So, you know, it is what it is. We'll see what happens. That's what I got for you guys. I hope you enjoy my videos in perspective. If you do, make sure you hit the subscribe button. Make sure you hit the like button. Make sure you hit the bell if you want to get the alerts. Share my channel and videos with your friends and family. Leave your questions, comments, and concerns down in the comment section. And of course, as always, follow me on Twitter at Dillon Tartaro. And with that, I am out. See y'all soon. Fins up.